Hello. I'd like to talk about Indian classical music today. Indian classical music is a very beautiful art form that can touch the soul of people from all different walks of life. Until my first experience with classical music, it was only after that I became the person that I am today. An American living in India for the past 20 years, performing and propagating Indian classical music to a global audience. Wondering how that transformation occurred? Well, let's start from the beginning. From a very young age, my mother was a pilot and she worked for an airline. We were very fortunate to travel extensively during that time, and growing up, I was introduced to a multicultural lifestyle from a very young age. At the same time, when I was around 16, I remember visiting a friend's house. My friend was a pianist, and one evening he performed for us. He played classical music, and it was something like I've never heard before, hearing live classical music in such an intimate setting with just 3 or 4 of my good friends around. It's really something that I can't put into words, but it really clicked with me. And it was from that moment my obsession with classical music began. Because of my experience in travel at a young age, and also my great love for music, a few years later, I took a course on world music. In one section, we were taught a few of the basic features of Indian classical music. I was so intrigued by it that I went down to my local record shop and I purchased my first Hindustani classical album by none other than the great Ravi Shankar. Yes. By that time, I was very interested and inspired to see India. I wanted to see everything. The place, the people. I wanted to taste the food and hear the music. So, not long after going to India, my purpose began to unfold. During my travels, I remember attending an all-night music festival of flute and vocal music. There was a full moon, and it was festival of Dwarka. And it was because of this unique experience, me being a foreigner, not having these experience of all-night concert or anything like that, and all the lights of the festivals and everybody in a great mood, it just had such a profound effect on me. The haunting sound of the Bansuri flowing through the midnight air. I knew at that moment that this would become my instrument. Soon after, I traveled to Varanasi and began formal training. It was around this time that I had heard a cassette recording of Hariprasad Chaurasia, and I was spellbound. I knew that one day he would become my teacher. As fate would have it, the same year that I moved to Mumbai, Hariprasad ji had opened his Vrindavan Gurukul in Versova, and I became among his first batch of students. From that moment on, I immersed myself completely in the music. Hariji would call me the one who works hard when talking to others, and I accepted that title as a great source of pride. Finally, after 6 years of rigorous training, I felt that it was time to move on and to continue my journey as a solo classical artist. Well, some of you may know that it requires extreme amounts of discipline and self-sacrifice to become an artist. For me, it was even more difficult, from having to learn a completely new art form from scratch to a foreign country without any connections or family. Initial skepticism and disbelief from everyone around me, my friends, my family, my musical peers, and even myself. The list goes on and on. And that often leads to the next question that people like to ask me. Why Indian classical music? Well, short answer, because I like pain. No, just joking. Actually, it's a very simple answer. Because Indian classical music is beautiful. It's just that simple. Classical music attempts to put into expression words and feelings where words fall short. Like all great music, Indian classical music has a universality which can connect people from all different walks of life. On top of that, it requires a high degree of science, nuance, methodology, discipline, and a small bit of pedigree to help add to its mystique. All in all, Indian classical music covers all the criteria that allows it to take its place amongst the finest of fine arts. Effort is required to understand and appreciate some of the fundamentals of Indian classical music. But as with most great things, that effort pays off. And when it does, we often learn something about ourselves that we hadn't known before. This is the beauty of the fine arts. To quote the great poet of the 13th century, Maulana Rumi, "Do not feel lonely, for there is an entire universe within all of us." In these modern times, with its fast change and rapid progress, it's easy to forget the connectedness that we have to those around us. Indian classical music brings us back to our roots, and it helps to remind us of that which is most important. I'd like to give an example. When I practice an ancient rag like Rag Shri or Malkons or Bhairav, I like to remember all of the generations before ours who have sat and enjoyed the same music with the same amount of nuance and complexity, the same tradition going back over 2,000 years. It's at that moment that I'm struck by the timelessness of things, the constant, or the classic. Despite all the chaos that might be going on around me at that moment, I am able to recenter myself and to remember that which is important. That's why, in today's day, we need Indian classical music more than ever. This is why we love it. A great man once said, "Those who dare to fail miserably can achieve greatly." Well, the jury may still be in deliberation in my case, but for all those of us who want to change the world for a better place, for all of us who want to bring Indian classical music forth into the world, we must adhere to the truth and we must follow the path as best we can. Indian classical music has shown me that path. It has been the hard path, but I sincerely believe it is the right path. Thank you.